Karen secretly blocked my disabled son's ramp. My uncle is the city mayor. I never thought I'd be the one to spark a town-wide scandal, but life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. My name is Sarah, and this is the story of how my quiet life in Willow Creek turned into a battle for justice, a clash of hearts, and ultimately, a lesson in humanity that none of us saw coming. It all started with Karen. Oh, Karen. If you've ever lived in a suburban neighborhood with an HOA, you know the type. Perfectly manicured lawn, a perpetual scowl, and a clipboard she wielded like a scepter. Karen was the self-appointed queen of Willow Creek's Homeowners Association, and she made it her mission to ensure everyone followed her rules. No unapproved mailboxes, no overgrown hedges, no stepping out of line. To her, our little cul-de-sac was her kingdom, and she was determined to keep it pristine, no matter the cost. I moved to Willow Creek 3 years ago with my son Ethan. He's 12, with a smile that could melt glaciers and a spirit tougher than anyone I've ever met. Ethan was born with cerebral palsy, and getting around in his wheelchair is just part of his daily life. When we bought our house, the first thing we did was install a ramp to the front porch. It wasn't just a convenience, it was Ethan's lifeline to the world. Without it, he couldn't get to school, to therapy, or even just roll outside to feel the sun on his face. The ramp wasn't flashy, it was sturdy, practical, and built to blend in with the house. But to Karen, it was an eyesore, a blemish on her vision of suburban perfection. From the moment it went up, she'd purse her lips every time she walked by, muttering about property values and aesthetic standards. Sure, I tried to be neighborly, brought her cookies, invited her to Ethan's birthday party, but Karen wasn't interested in friendliness. She was interested in control. It was a Tuesday morning in June when I first noticed something was off. Ethan and I were heading out for his physical therapy appointment, but when we got to the ramp, there was a massive ceramic planter sitting right in the middle of it. It was one of those gaudy things, filled with fake flowers and probably weighing 100 pounds. I stared at it, dumbfounded. There was no way Ethan's wheelchair could get around it. "Mom, what's that doing there?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowing. "I don't know, buddy," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "Maybe someone moved it by mistake." But deep down, I knew it wasn't a mistake. Planters don't just wander onto ramps in the middle of the night. I pushed it aside with every ounce of strength I had, scraping my knuckles in the process, and got Ethan to his appointment. But the whole drive, my mind was racing. Who would do this? And why? That evening, I checked the security camera we'd installed above the porch. It was a cheap little thing, mostly to catch package thieves, but it had a clear view of the ramp. At 2:17 a.m., there she was, Karen in a floral nightgown, lugging that planter onto the ramp with a look of grim determination. She glanced around, clearly thinking no one would see her, then scurried back to her house across the street. My blood boiled. This wasn't just a prank. It was cruel. It was personal. Karen didn't just dislike the ramp. She was trying to trap Ethan in our house. I sat there, staring at the grainy footage, my hands shaking. I wanted to march over to her house and scream. I wanted to throw that planter through her window, but I didn't. Instead, I called my Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom isn't just family. He's the mayor of Willow Creek. He's a big man with a bigger heart, the kind of person who remembers every kid's name at the town picnic and still mows his own lawn. When I told him what happened, his voice went quiet, the way it does when he's really angry. "Sarah, you've got proof?" he asked. "I've got her on camera," I said. "Send it to me. And don't confront her yet. Let's do this right." I sent him the footage, and by the next morning, Willow Creek was buzzing. Uncle Tom didn't just sit on the video. He shared it. He posted it on the town's community Facebook page, along with a statement, "This is not who we are. Ethan deserves better. We all do." He didn't name Karen outright, but everyone knew whose house was in the background, whose planter was on that ramp. By noon, the post had hundreds of comments. People were livid. "Disgusting! Who does this to a kid? She needs to be held accountable." But there were others, Karen's friends mostly, who jumped to her defense. "Maybe it was an accident. You're blowing this out of proportion. What about her right to privacy?" The debate exploded, splitting the town into camps. Those who saw Karen's act as unforgivable, and those who thought she was just protecting the neighborhood. Karen, of course, didn't take it lying down. She stormed over to my house that afternoon, her face red and her eyes blazing. I was in the front yard helping Ethan practice his wheelchair turns when she marched up. "You think you can ruin me with that video?" she snapped. "I was moving my planter to clean it. This is a witch hunt." I stood up, keeping myself between her and Ethan. "Karen, I saw you on camera. You put it there at 2 in the morning. You weren't cleaning anything." Her eyes narrowed. "You people always play the victim. Your kid's probably not even that disabled. I've seen him move his arms." I felt like I'd been slapped. Ethan, who'd been listening quietly, looked down at his lap, his shoulders slumping. That was the moment I lost it. "Get off my property," I said, my voice low and shaking, "and stay away from my son." Karen huffed, spun on her heel, and left. But the war was just beginning. The next few days were chaos. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly Willow Creek was in the spotlight. Reporters camped out on our street, interviewing neighbors, snapping photos of the ramp. Someone started a hashtag, Justice for Ethan, and it spread like wildfire. People posted stories about their own encounters with Karen, her snide comments at HOA meetings, her complaints about undesirable families. But Karen's allies fought back, claiming she was being canceled for a misunderstanding. Uncle Tom called a town hall meeting to address the issue. "This isn't just about a planter," he said in his opening remarks. "It's about who we are as a community. It's about whether we stand up for what's right." The meeting was packed, standing room only. Karen showed up, flanked by her husband and a lawyer, looking defiant. I sat in the front row with Ethan, my heart pounding. When Uncle Tom played the security footage on a big screen, the room gasped. There was no denying it now. Karen's guilt was undeniable. But Karen wasn't ready to back down. She took the microphone, her voice dripping with indignation. "I've lived in this town for 20 years, she said. "I've kept this neighborhood beautiful. And now you're all turning on me because of one mistake? You should be ashamed." The crowd erupted. People shouted, some calling her a liar, others pleading for calm. Ethan squeezed my hand and I looked down at him. His eyes were wide, but there was a quiet strength in them. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered. "She doesn't get it yet." He was right. Karen didn't get it, but she was about to. The town hall marked a turning point. The HOA board, under pressure, stripped Karen of her position. The police got involved, citing vandalism and discrimination, and Karen was slapped with a misdemeanor charge. Her husband, a local realtor, started losing clients. Their perfect life was unraveling, and Karen had no one to blame but herself. But the real consequences weren't legal or social. They were personal. A week after the town hall, I found Karen sitting on her porch, staring at nothing. She looked different, smaller somehow. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "Sarah," she called out as I walked by with Ethan. Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying. "Can we talk?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to keep walking, to let her stew in her mess. But Ethan tugged my sleeve. "Let's hear her out, Mom." So we did. And that conversation changed everything. Karen's porch was usually a shrine to her perfectionism. Potted plants arranged just so, cushions fluffed, not a speck of dust. But that day it looked as defeated as she did. The cushions were askew and a coffee mug sat abandoned on the railing, its contents long gone cold. She stood up as Ethan and I approached, her hands twisting nervously in front of her. For the first time since I'd known her, Karen didn't look like she was about to lecture someone. She looked lost. "Sarah, She stopped, glancing at Ethan, then back at me. "I owe you an apology." I crossed my arms, not ready to let her off the hook. "You think an apology fixes what you did? You blocked my son's ramp, Karen. You called him a liar about his disability. You don't get to just say sorry and make it go away." Ethan, ever the peacemaker, rolled a little closer. "Mom, let her talk," he said softly. His voice had that calm, steady quality that always reminded me he was stronger than anyone gave him credit for. Karen's eyes flickered to him, and for a split second, I saw something new in her expression. Shame, maybe, or fear. She sat back down, gesturing to the wicker chairs across from her. "Please, just hear me out." Against my better judgment, I sat. Ethan parked his wheelchair next to me, his hands folded in his lap. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes your skin prickle. I didn't know what to expect, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. I didn't mean for it to go this far, Karen started, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought, I thought you were exaggerating. About Ethan, about the ramp, about everything. I've seen families move into this neighborhood and some of them, they use excuses to get special treatment. I thought you were one of them. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. You thought I was faking my son's disability? For what, Karen? A ramp? Attention? She flinched, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. I know it sounds awful. It is awful. But I've spent years trying to keep this place perfect. The rules, the standards, they're what hold us together. When I saw that ramp, I thought it was just another way people were bending the rules. I didn't think about Ethan. I didn't think about what it meant to him. You didn't think about him because you didn't want to, I shot back. You saw a kid in a wheelchair and decided he was a problem to be fixed, not a person. Karen's eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. Not yet. You're right, she said, her voice cracking. I judged you, I judged him, and I was wrong. But I didn't know how wrong until everyone turned on me. I leaned forward, my voice low. You don't get to play the victim here. You did this. You chose to hurt us. I know, she burst out, startling us both. I know I did this, and now my life is falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it. Her hands flew to her face, and she let out a sob, the kind that comes from deep inside, where all the ugly truths live. Ethan, who'd been quiet, spoke up. Why did you think I wasn't really disabled? His voice wasn't angry, just curious, like he genuinely wanted to understand. Karen froze, her hands dropping to her lap. She looked at him, really looked at him, maybe for the first time. I don't know, she admitted. I saw you smiling, playing with your friends, and I thought, maybe it wasn't as bad as your mom said. I was stupid. I didn't understand. Ethan nodded, like he was processing her words. It's okay to not understand, he said, but you should have asked, instead of deciding for yourself. Those words hit her like a freight train. Karen's mouth opened, then closed, and for a moment, she just stared at Ethan, like she was seeing him for the first time. I could almost see the gears turning in her head, the slow unraveling of the assumptions she'd clung to for so long. The conversation didn't last much longer. Karen promised to make things right, though she didn't say how, and I wasn't sure I believed her. As we left her porch, Ethan looked back and waved. See you around, Karen, he said, his tone light but firm. I didn't know it then, but that moment was the beginning of Karen's reckoning and her redemption. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. The legal case against Karen moved forward, though it was clear the misdemeanor charge wasn't the real punishment. The court of public opinion had already sentenced her. Her name was synonymous with cruelty in Willow Creek, whispered in grocery stores and shouted online. Someone spray-painted "Karma for Karen" on her driveway, and though the police investigated, no one was ever caught. Her husband, Mark, stopped going to work, and rumors swirled that they were planning to move. But Karen didn't leave. Instead, she doubled down. She started showing up at community events, awkwardly at first, like she wasn't sure she was welcome. She'd stand at the edges of bake sales or park cleanups, clutching a coffee cup, her eyes scanning the crowd for a friendly face. Most people ignored her. Some glared, but a few, like Mrs. Delaney from down the street, would nod or say hello, and I could see Karen clinging to those small gestures like lifelines. The turning point came when Uncle Tom announced a community service program for Ethan's school. They were building an accessible playground, one that kids like Ethan could use without barriers. The project needed volunteers, and to everyone's shock, Karen signed up. I was skeptical. So was half the town. She's just trying to save face, people muttered. It's too little, too late. But Ethan, as always, saw things differently. Maybe she wants to help, he said one night at dinner. Maybe she's sorry. I didn't have the heart to argue with him. Ethan had a way of seeing the good in people, even when they didn't deserve it. So when the first volunteer day rolled around, I went to the playground site, partly to help and partly to keep an eye on Karen. She was there, in jeans and a t-shirt, looking out of place among the shovels and wheelbarrows. The other volunteers gave her a wide berth, but she didn't shy away. She grabbed a shovel and started digging, her face set with a determination I hadn't seen before. When Ethan rolled up to thank the volunteers, Karen stopped working and watched him. She didn't approach him, didn't say anything, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of understanding, maybe, or regret. Over the next few weeks, Karen became a regular at the playground project. She wasn't chatty, wasn't trying to win anyone over. She just worked. She hauled dirt, painted benches, and even helped design the sensory garden, asking Ethan for input on what colors he liked. Slowly, people started to soften. Not everyone, some would never forgive her, but enough that she wasn't a complete pariah anymore. One day as we were packing up, Karen approached me. Her hair was tied back, and there was dirt smudged on her cheek. She looked like a different person from the HOA tyrant I'd known. "Sarah, can I ask you something?" she said, her voice hesitant. I braced myself. "What?" "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep going with everything Ethan goes through? How do you not get angry at the world?" I wasn't expecting that. For a moment, I just stared at her, trying to decide if she was genuine. But there was no pretense in her eyes, just a raw, desperate need to understand. "It's not about not getting angry," I said finally. "I get angry all the time. At doctors, at insurance companies, at people like you. But Ethan, he doesn't let anger win. He chooses to be kind, to be grateful for what he has. That's what keeps us going." Karen nodded, her eyes glistening. "I want to be better," she whispered. "I don't know how, but I want to try." For the first time, I believed her. The playground's grand opening was a big deal. The local news came back, this time to cover something positive. Kids ran around laughing while parents snapped photos. Ethan was in the middle of it all, zooming down the accessible slide, his grin brighter than the sun. I stood with Uncle Tom, watching the scene unfold, my heart full. Karen was there too, standing off to the side. She wasn't part of the ribbon cutting or the speeches, but she didn't need to be. She'd helped make this place real, and that was enough. When Ethan spotted her, he waved her over. "Hey, Karen," he called. "Come try the swing." The crowd went quiet, all eyes on her. Karen hesitated, then walked over, her steps tentative. Ethan pointed to the accessible swing, designed for kids in wheelchairs. "You push, I'll swing," he said, his tone teasing but warm. Karen laughed, a real, unguarded laugh, and started pushing. For a moment, they were just two people enjoying a sunny day, not a villain and a victim. The crowd watched, some smiling, some still skeptical, but the moment felt like a bridge, a small step towards something better. As the day wound down, Uncle Tom pulled me aside. "You think she's changed?" he asked, nodding toward Karen. "I think she's trying," I said. "That's more than I expected." He nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Sometimes that's all it takes." The playground opening was a triumph, but it wasn't the end of Karen's story, or ours. In the months that followed, Willow Creek grappled with the fallout of the ramp incident. The town was still divided, with some residents holding tight to their grudges and others cautiously open to the idea that Karen might be changing. For me, it was a time of reflection. I'd spent so long being angry, at Karen, at the world, that I hadn't realized how much energy it took to hold on to that rage. Ethan, as always, was my guide. His ability to forgive, to see the best in people, was a reminder that kindness wasn't weakness, it was strength. Karen's misdemeanor case wrapped up with a sentence that surprised no one. Community service, 200 hours to be served at the new accessible playground and other local projects. Some called it a slap on the wrist, but I saw it differently. For someone like Karen, who'd built her identity on control and superiority, being forced to serve others was a kind of poetic justice. She'd have to face the people she'd hurt, day after day, and there was no hiding from that. At first, Karen approached her service with the same grim determination she'd shown at the playground build. She showed up on time, did the work, and kept her head down. But something shifted as the weeks went by. She started talking to the kids, asking them about their favorite games or what they wanted to plant in the community garden. She listened to the parents, not just nodding politely, but really hearing them. And she spent a lot of time with Ethan. It started small. One day she asked if she could help him with his art project at the playground's after-school program. Ethan, who loves painting, was thrilled to have someone to share his ideas with. Karen wasn't an artist by any stretch, but she sat with him, mixing colors and laughing when they accidentally splattered paint on her shirt. I watched from a distance, my heart caught between suspicion and hope. Was this real, or was she just playing a role to salvage her reputation? Ethan didn't have those doubts. "She's trying, Mom," he told me one evening as we drove home. "She's not perfect, but she's trying." I wanted to believe him, but trust is hard to rebuild once it's been shattered. Still, I couldn't deny what I saw. Karen was different, not just in how she acted, but in how she carried herself. The sharp edges of her personality, the ones that used to cut through every conversation, were softening. She wasn't the HOA queen anymore. She was just Karen. The real test came at the town's annual Harvest Festival, a big event with food stalls, games, and a talent show. Ethan had been practicing a song on his adaptive guitar, a gift from his therapist, and he was set to perform. I was nervous for him, but he was buzzing with excitement. The whole town turned out, and the community center was packed with familiar faces. Uncle Tom, Mrs. Delaney, even some of Karen's old HOA cronies, though they kept their distance. Karen was there too, helping set up chairs and pass out programs. She'd volunteered without being asked, a far cry from the woman who used to demand a spotlight for every task. When Ethan's turn came, she stood at the back, watching as he rolled onto the stage. Ethan's performance was magic. His fingers moved carefully over the strings, and his voice, clear and strong, filled the room with a song about hope and home. The crowd was silent, then erupted in applause when he finished. I was crying, Uncle Tom was crying, and even some of the tough guys in the back were wiping their eyes. Ethan beamed, waving to the crowd, and for a moment, everything felt right. Then came the moment no one expected. As Ethan rolled off the stage, Karen stepped forward. She wasn't on the program, wasn't supposed to speak, but she took the microphone from the MC, her hands trembling. The room went quiet, a mix of curiosity and tension hanging in the air. "I wasn't going to say anything tonight," Karen began, her voice unsteady. "But I need to. I owe this town, especially Ethan and Sarah, an apology. Not just for what I did, but for who I was." You could have heard a pin drop. Karen gripped the microphone, her knuckles white. "I thought I was protecting this place, keeping it perfect. But all I did was hurt people. I hurt Ethan, a kid who's braver and kinder than I'll ever be. I hurt Sarah, who's fought for her son every day. I hurt all of you, because I made you feel like you had to be perfect too." She paused, swallowing hard. "I was wrong. About Ethan, about the ramp, about everything. I didn't understand what it means to be a neighbor, to care about someone other than yourself. But I'm learning. Ethan's teaching me. This town is teaching me. And I'm so sorry it took me this long to listen." The room was still, the weight of her words settling over everyone. Some people looked skeptical, their arms crossed. Others were nodding, their faces soft with understanding. Ethan, sitting next to me, leaned forward, his eyes locked on Karen. "I don't expect forgiveness," Karen continued. "I don't deserve it, but I'm going to keep trying to make things right. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because you all deserve better. Because Ethan deserves better." She set the microphone down and stepped back, her shoulders slumping like she'd just run a marathon. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ethan started clapping. His hands moved slowly at first, then faster, and soon others joined in. Mrs. Delaney, Uncle Tom, a few kids from the playground. It wasn't a standing ovation, not by a long shot, but it was enough. It was a start. Karen looked out at the crowd, her eyes glistening, and when she saw Ethan clapping, she smiled. A real, broken, grateful smile. I felt something shift in my chest, a knot I'd been carrying for months starting to loosen. I didn't clap, not yet, but I didn't look away either. The festival continued, but Karen's speech was the talk of the night. People debated it over apple cider and pumpkin pie. Some called it a publicity stunt, others a genuine turning point. The local news ran a story titled "HOA Scandals, Karen Seeks Redemption," and the comments section was a war zone of opinions. But through it all, Karen kept showing up. She finished her community service hours and kept volunteering. She started a fundraiser for adaptive equipment at Ethan's school, quietly without fanfare. She listened when people spoke, even when they were angry, and slowly, bit by bit, she became part of Willow Creek again, not as a ruler, but as a neighbor. A year after the ramp incident, I ran into Karen at the playground. Ethan was there, playing a game of tag with his friends, his laughter echoing across the field. Karen was planting bulbs in the sensory garden, her hands covered in dirt. She looked up as I approached, a cautious smile on her face. "Hey, Sarah," she said. "Beautiful day, huh?" "Yeah," I said, glancing at Ethan. "It is." We stood there for a moment, the silence comfortable in a way I never thought it could be. Then Karen spoke, her voice soft. "I think about that night a lot. The night I moved the planter. I don't know who I was back then." I nodded, not sure what to say. "You're not her anymore," I said finally. "That's what matters." Karen's eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw peace in them. Not absolution, not yet, but something close. "Thank you," she said, "for giving me a chance to try." I didn't say anything, just nodded and walked over to Ethan. As I watched him play, I thought about everything that had happened. The anger, the pain, the healing. Karen's actions had torn us apart, but they'd also brought us together, forcing us to decide who we wanted to be. And in the end, we'd chosen kindness, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Uncle Tom retired as mayor a few months later, passing the torch to a new generation. The town threw him a big party, and Karen was there, helping with the decorations. She and I never became friends, not exactly, but we were something better. Neighbors who learned to see each other, flaws and all. As for Ethan, he kept being Ethan, brave, kind, and unstoppable. He taught us all what it means to forgive, to grow, to love. And in a town that had once been divided by a planter on a ramp, that was the greatest victory of all. The end.